Hi, I'm Graham Steele, Head of Product in Cyber here at SandboxAQ, and today I'm joined by Lucas from my product team. So you worked in cryptography, notably at the US Department of Defense.
That's right.
Awesome. Great to have you here today. So today we're going to talk about Cryptography Inventory. So what is it and why should I care?
Yeah, so a cryptography inventory is essentially a list of all of the cryptographic assets, so whether those are keys, certificates, the operations that those keys and certificates perform, a list of everything involving or related to cryptography that lives in your IT infrastructure and on your network. And it's in many ways kind of a consolidation of inventories that may already exist today. Mm-hmm. So a lot of organizations maintain an inventory or management of certificates, for example, or they may maintain a list of keys that secure data at rest. But one important aspect of a cryptographic inventory is that it consolidates all these different silos of cryptographic assets into one whole common operating picture for your cryptographic assets.
So why is this becoming like a hot topic now?
Well, a lot of it was started through the increasing focus on the threat of quantum computing. Understanding that quantum computers pose a risk to all currently used public key encryption systems. We're anticipating needing to undertake kind of the largest cryptographic change or adoption that we've had to do kind of as an industry before. And we've had to move from algorithm to algorithm over the time before, but this kind of represents the single most significant migration that we've done. Across the industry, just from government and the private sector, the steps have been fairly clear, and CISA has laid this out in their guidance for post-quantum adoption, that the first step, and this makes sense, the first step of any sort of adoption, moving from one type of cryptography to another, is understanding everywhere your existing cryptography lives. Because only once you have a full understanding can you do an effective migration. And so that's what's prompted the interest. Mm-hmm. Although I think what's important is that the post-quantum adoption effort alone isn't the only reason why you would want to have a cryptography inventory. There's a lot of people who are paying close attention to the threat of quantum computers, and they'll be ready to migrate when the time comes. But what they've noticed is that the cryptographic inventory is also very useful for the daily management of their infrastructure that they're doing today. So completely independent of the post-quantum threat, these inventories can be incredibly powerful as the amount of cryptography that you use in your infrastructure and across your IT organization has just expanded exponentially from where it was 10, 15 years ago.
Interesting. Okay, right. So there's this topic of the post-quantum migration, and I might want to have my inventory because it's like a roadmap for that migration that I'm gonna do. But there are other things that I can do with this cryptography inventory in the short term. Tell me more about some more of those kind of things.
So there's some operations that we're very familiar with already. So for example, certificate rotation and expiration has been kind of a constant pain for people who operate their infrastructure. And so that's one segment of an example of a cryptographic inventory or a partial inventory that some organizations are already performing today. As they're maintaining a list of their certificates and making sure that they can rotate those certificates before they expire. But that's only one portion of an inventory, and it doesn't capture the entire dimension, every dimension that an IT organization uses cryptography. So certificates and just the static certificates that are used for TLS connections is one example. But cryptography lives across every dimension of an IT organization. So there's applications that are using cryptography. There's cryptography and data at rest that on host file systems. And then also the communications, TLS connections, and also other protocols as well. And so it's important to kind of understand not just kind of an individual dimension of where and how you're using cryptography, but a full understanding across your entire IT organization.
Right. So this is going to be a useful asset to me then in managing my cybersecurity. And as you were saying, we've kind of heard in some other videos too, the way that we've been managing this cryptography in the past has been like kind of siloed in these sort of vertical considerations. So the interesting thing about this inventory is to be kind of cross-cutting. So if that's starting to sound like a desirable thing to have, how do I go about actually getting a cryptography inventory for my organization?
Well, as I mentioned before, a lot of organizations may already have at least a partial inventory. So there's a lot of management of your cryptography that you're already doing. So that's a good starting point. There are tools out there to help consolidate those and form that full picture. So AQtive Guard is one of those. But it really is about finding the right tool and the right process for your organization. So different organizations are structured in different ways. They manage their assets in different ways. There may be existing information that lives in different bits and pieces, systems, data lakes or whatever. And it's useful to just take a look at your organization and take the existing data that already lives there, consolidate that, and then identify the gaps that you might have, and then think about ways to fill in those gaps.
Right. So to be clear, what we're looking to build here is not just like a one-off, inventory sheet. We're looking to build a process, right?
That's right, because the cryptography, it's easy to think of cryptography as a relatively static thing because the underlying math that powers all of our cryptography has remained generally stable, especially relative to all the other aspects of your IT infrastructure. But really, cryptography is as much of a living, breathing organism in your infrastructure as everything else is. And so the assets that you're trying to inventory, how they're used, and what could be impacted by cryptography is evolving day over day, week over week, year over year. So it's important to have a continuous process of inventory as opposed to just a fixed, static, one-time inventory.
Awesome. Interesting. Right. If you want to find out more about how AQtive Guard, for example, can help you build your cryptography inventory process for your organization, there's going to be a link to that under the video. Meanwhile, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything here on the SandboxAQ YouTube. And it just remains for me to say thank you, Nicholas.
Thanks, Grant.